Give me a show of hands. How many of you have sat through a horrible movie just to know how it ends? Okay, good. I'm definitely not alone. I actually feel incomplete unless I know exactly how a horrible movie is going to end. And then at the end of the movie, I'm always asking myself, why did I just sit through that movie? The question is quite simple. It's because stories are powerful, and it's in our human nature to be curious, which compels us to listen to stories, whether they are good or bad. I found this quote from John Thomas, which read, "Stories are powerful. They are the emotional glue that connects storyteller with the audience, and more importantly, the audience with the idea the storyteller is trying to convey." I want you to think about this for a second, because if you want to be successful in sales, you need to do just that. Make an emotional connection with your customers. Customers actually want to know they're making the right decisions when making a purchase. They can't make those decisions with just facts and figures when making a purchase. They actually make decisions based on feelings and instincts. Today, I'm going to focus on training you on how to build a stronger emotional connection with your customers. Having a strong emotional connection will help you make sales. So this I hold in my hand is a rock. It's not a magical rock. It's just an ordinary rock that you could find on the side of the road. Would you be surprised that I actually got someone to buy a bunch of these rocks by telling her my story? A story that I'll actually tell you a little bit later. I just want you to keep this in the back of your mind when I talk to you about the many ways to create an emotional connection with your customers. In order to help you understand the importance of making emotional connections with your customers, I will explain to you the art of storytelling, how stories sync your mind, some tools for persuasions, and some sales presentations, techniques, and ideas that will help you make a stronger connection with your customers. So, what is the art of storytelling? And why is it so important when trying to make um, sell products to our customers? These are great questions that every salesperson should be asking themselves, but oftentimes don't. We live in stories, and they're all around us. Every day we relate to them. It has been proven that they engage both sides of our brain, making them more memorable and making it easier to keep and to understand new information. In the past few months, I am sure you have heard a story from either a friend or a family member. And I'm also sure that you've probably heard some sort of statistic in some way or another. Which of these two types of information was easiest to remember? I'm going to bet that it was a story that you heard and not the statistic. The key to an effective story is to find a connection with your customers by telling them stories they can actually relate to, like family situations. Everyone has a family they can relate to. Maybe it's that fun aunt or crazy grandma. If you can get a person to relate to you, then it's easier to get them to trust you. Stories are more believable than facts. Stories show us. They don't just tell us about a situation or a person. It allows us to get a clear picture and a better understanding of what to expect. To have an effective story, it has to have purpose. And a narrative story can actually break down the barrier to better persuade a person. It makes it much more likely that the customer will agree with your point of view, making it easier to sell products. Use stories to persuade customers that our product can actually help them achieve the success they desire. So, back to this rock. I saw a person in the store looking extremely sad, and she kind of looked lost. I didn't work at the store, but I still went up to her and just started talking. She told me that she just lost her mother. I instantly related. She went on telling me that she didn't know what she was looking for. I felt inclined to share with her my story. My mother told me that rocks hold the energy that people use to pray. And they hold the prayer. And um, years later, my mom was in the hospital fighting for her life. A nurse gave me and my family a bunch of rocks to pray with. I placed my rock in my mother's hand. God answered my prayer because all of her pain went away as she went up to heaven. For her funeral, I went out and bought a whole bunch of rocks and wrote a prayer on each one of them and passed them out to my entire family. I placed one rock in my mother's hand, so our energy will always be connected. We both, at the same time, was in tears. But she smiled at me and said, "Where do I find these rocks?" Good stories give an emotional meaning and can actually inspire us. The most effective way of delivering information is through the emotional connection of stories. They might make ideas real and come to life. Stories are powerful. They shape us, motivate us, influence us. They help customers form a connection on a personal and emotional level with yourself and with the company. It allows them to personalize the given information, making meaning of it based on their own experiences. It is scientifically proven that stories actually stimulate and engage the human brain by reaching both their minds and their hearts, and by getting their attention. Walt Disney is an excellent example of creating these kinds of stories. His stories captured the hearts and minds of millions. They inspired people of all ages, and his stories will be loved for generations to come. You don't have to be Walt Disney to be a great storyteller, because we all are natural storytellers. But sometimes we lose this part of us and we forget the magic in a great story. Instead, we focus on selling a product and forget that what is truly important to us, the customer, and gaining their trust, respect, and loyalty. For salespeople, then, storytelling is the process of making a connection with the customers first and selling a product second. It is interesting on how the brain processes and recalls information and how that information is actually stamped into your brains. This is the power of stories. They plant ideas and emotions into the listener's brain, causing the brain of both the storyteller and the listener to actually think. Research has actually discovered that our brains are more active when we hear stories. By telling stories, you can plant ideas, thoughts, and emotions into the listener's brain. Scientists discovered that telling stories builds empathy and also helps to explain why. When you tell a good story, people act as if they're watching it unfold kind of right before them. And their brain actually syncs up with the storyteller. Close your eyes for a second. Now picture yourself in a movie theater, okay, packed for opening night, a great film. You are sitting next to hundreds of strangers, all focused on this film. Everyone laughs at the same time, and I'm even sure they even blink at the same time. Even their brain activities is, to a remarkable degree, synchronized. This last weekend, I went to a movie with my sisters. We all read a series of books, and we get together and watch the movies. The movie that just happened was 50 Shades Darker. While sitting in the movie theater, I noticed that we all laughed. I said, "Aw," jumped, got teary-eyed, all at the same time. And in some of the parts, I'm not going to go into details on those parts, but I could tell that we all felt a little uncomfortable next to each other. Like I said before, I'm not going to go into details, but some of the scenes I noticed made us all kind of squirm in our seats, or sit a little different. And I could tell they didn't really want to be sitting next to their sister. The point of all of this is that our minds were all synced with one another and with the movie. The story of the movie was causing us to respond actually in the same way. For as long as you've got the attention of your audience, they're actually in your mind. When you have a good story, you develop empathy with the teller because you experience the events for yourself. This makes sense. Stories should be powerful. They helped to share information long ago, before we even had a written language. Storytelling is the ultimate tool for persuasion. Persuasion is defined as influencing somebody to act by appealing to reason. You cannot persuade someone through logic alone. If you tell a story just right, you can persuade even the hardest of people to agree with you. Get your customers' attention, emotionalize your goal as theirs, and move them to act in your favor. Storytelling should be part of every discussion intended to persuade a listener back to your idea, even when it's just a casual conversation. The ability to persuade customers through storytelling is a huge, huge competitive advantage. But persuasions happen when you have three components present. Ethel, which is your credibility. We tend to agree with people who we respect for their achievements, their title, their experience in life. There's many ways to build your credibility with your customers by getting their respect, being trustworthy, being a good person, and showing them that you do know a great deal about our product. Keep in mind that this isn't enough for you to know that you are a credible source, but your customers must also know this. You would probably trust a shoe more if Michael Jordan told you that it was great. But you also need to have logos. And it is persuasion through logic, reason, data, statistic. It is a way of proving to your customer that the product is right for them. But you also need to have pathos, which is appealing to emotions, um, to influence your customers through emotion. After you use pathos, then you can use ethos and logos. Here are some areas where you can help customers develop deeper emotional connection with your company. So you can ask questions first. The best way to know what your customer wants or needs is by asking them. Ask questions that will help your customer explain what they're looking for. After you get this information, it's much easier to show how your product or service can satisfy their wants and their needs. This way, the customer feels like you actually care about their needs and not just the need for a sale. After you ask your question, you should really listen to your customer. There is nothing more insulting than feeling that you are being ignored by another person. And too often, salespeople fail to simply listen to their customers. If you truly listen, then you can gain the loyalty, love, and respect from your customer. And you also need to be patient. Like many important things through in life, it takes patience to develop that long-lasting customer relationship. Don't rush the process for making a sale. Instead, take the time to explain your product and tell your story. So in conclusion, having a strong emotional connection will help you better make sales. Um, in order to help you understand the importance of making a strong emotional connection with your customer, I have explained to you the art of storytelling, how stories sync your mind, some different tools for persuasion, and sales presentation techniques, ideas that will help you make a better emotional connection with your customers. So just remember, when you make a sale, focus on the customer's needs and their wants. And tell them great stories to gain their trust and respect, because storytelling is powerful. if I can persuade somebody to buy a bunch of rocks, then you should be able to persuade them to buy any of your products that you're trying to sell.